there's one argument that we don't have to learn English grammar so well. We have a lot of like grammar books, especially those printed in the past. The grammar points are too trivial and too difficult to understand.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah, because for English teachers, it's easy for them to distinguish these two, right? Maybe some students, all through their lives, they don't understand the difference between them. But they can still speak English.
Exactly. You don't have to know these for you to speak perfect English, right? Like native English speakers, they did not learn English through like memorizing grammar rules, right? They learned English from their parents as a baby.
So all through their life, they don't know the difference between boring book and I'm interested in learning. The boring and the learning is different thing.
Yeah, all through their lives, they probably have never thought of this concept before. I think this...
Hello everyone, this is Johnny, and today we have a special guest. Let's welcome Leo.
Hi everybody, I'm Leo.
So Leo, since you're a teacher here on Funday, can I ask about like what your forte is, your strong point?
So obviously, currently I am the lead teacher of grammar classroom right now.
Wow, lead teacher, you have authority in this field, right?
Yes.
An authoritative figure.
Yes.
Okay, so today our topic is how to learn grammar well. Since grammar, learning grammar is a perennial issue in Taiwan because we are not born as a native speaker. So what we have to do is to base our sentences on grammar points, on correct sentence patterns, so that we speak, correct English, right? But I think a lot of people, they also, there is one saying, there's one argument that we don't have to learn English grammar so well. Simply because I think a lot of times, we have a lot of like grammar books, especially those printed in the past. The grammar points are too trivial and too difficult to understand.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah, because, how about you? What's your take on this?
So the one that you brought up earlier, like those trivial grammar points, I have an example, like, for present simple tense, right? And for third person singular.
Yeah, exactly.
The verb has to conjugate into the S form, right? And then a lot of like textbooks, right? They would list out like when you add S, when you add ES, and then when you like take out the Y and then you add IES, 去Y加 IES, right? And there's like, and we have like so many rules, like if it's a consonant with a Y or a vowel and then a Y, right? These are so trivial, and when I see these...
But they are basic and they are fundamental.
Yeah,
I have to learn those, right?
Yeah, but for me, when I'm teaching this, I wouldn't really like make my students memorize this, right? Because I didn't memorize those rules, but I just naturally picked up those rules. Because
is there anything that you can think of that you think is not necessary? Like for the one that you just brought up, I think that's necessary. You have to understand when to add an S there and when to use the plural form. But maybe is there anything that you think is unnecessary?
So just like the one I mentioned earlier, right? Those rules, right? You just have to be aware that they're there, but you don't really have to like force yourself to memorize those rules, right? Because after you are aware of these rules, you can start to observe. Like when you're like reading text, you realize, oh, this word, right? It's an ES, right?
Okay.
Oh, this word, it's an IES, right? After you're aware of these rules, you can start to observe, and then you don't have to like put in so much time memorizing all those rules.
Exactly.
All you have to do is to be aware.
It just came to me. It just occurred to me that there is one thing in particular I would like to bring up. Do you know there is one term that's called 准关系代名词?
Oh, what is that?
Yeah, like as is. Like you say something like comma as is. That as is, it means which is. And in that case you can say as is.
that grammar will caught me off guard.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So exactly, because some grammar points, another one, just like no sooner than. Yeah, that one. Like another.
I think we use it with like past perfect tense.
Yeah, no sooner, blah blah. No sooner
had somebody, and you have to do the inversion.
Right, exactly. So that kind of sentence structure is because I used to teach that on the radio show, and some native speakers, they say that it's not very
it's not very common.
Updated.
It might sound
like
a bit
out of date.
Old-fashioned.
Yeah,
way.
old-fashioned way to say to use those sentence pattern like no sooner had I done something did us
or did
Okay, or what is that? What is the substitution for that?
It's like starting to confusing me. Yeah.
So I think that kind of grammar points, some of the grammar points that are very difficult to wrap your head around, I think sometimes you just have to let it go.
Yes, you don't have to put yourself through this, right? So for me, my teaching philosophy is if your purpose is not to get good grades or like for exams, then you just try to immerse yourself in the language, right? And through exposure, you can like accumulate experience.
Yeah. So like another example, my daughter is in junior high school now, and I also teach some junior high school English grammar, in the cram school. And it happens that they are learning things like, when you are doing the comparison, you need to add the other or not. For example, like Taipei is larger than any other city in Taiwan. And New York is larger than any city in Taiwan. So that's just the difference about the other. Yes. Whether to put an other there. So that kind of grammar points, they put a lot of effort into that kind of grammar points. But in fact, when you read something like for some elementary school students, when they prepare for junior TOEFL, that kind of grammar points are rarely tested.
Yes.
Right? And even for TOEFL test, they have already taken out the grammar part for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So it seems like our students, we're on kind of like on the wrong track with learning something that is never being tested on the test.
Exactly. Because I feel
on
like
the real test.
Yeah, you got a point, because the grammar rules that we're learning, it doesn't necessarily fit how people speak. Right. I have another example. It's what do we call it? If clause, conditional sentences.
If the weather is fine, we will go on a picnic.
Yeah, and there's this rule. I think it's unreal situation in the past, right? And you have to use past perfect, right? Or like if I had studied harder.
Hypothetical question.
If I had studied harder, I would have gotten a better grade, something like that. But actually, if you ask somebody, right, if you ask a native speaker, they probably wouldn't really know or notice how they speak, right? And I've actually heard some native speakers, like, because I watch the NBA a lot, and I've actually heard NBA announcers use the incorrect structure, but I wouldn't say it's incorrect because they're native speakers.
I know that one because they're not using it wrong because they use it like they tend to like mix and match.
Yes, because it's,
for example, like when you say if I had taken the medicine yesterday, I would feel better now. That's kind of like the mixed one, right? The first part is 与过去相反. If I had taken the medicine
unreal
yesterday,
situation in the past,
and I would feel better now.
Yes.
And the other one is if he were a good person, he wouldn't have dated your girlfriend. That is also a mixed.
But I'm not talking about a mixed one. I'm saying that they are using the unreal situation in the past, but they are not using the past perfect structure. They actually used past tense. Yeah, they would say like if he made the layup, right? But actually what they were trying to say in the correct structure should be if he had made the layup. But they probably wouldn't think about that when they're like speaking because it's their native language. They can say whatever they think it's correct, right? Maybe it's grammatically incorrect, but I think when we're learning English, we don't have to like really got caught up in those like trivial, just like you said, trivial grammar rules. And yeah, you would start to pick up those rules naturally as you immerse yourself in the language.
So I think one of the best approaches is to like read more.
Yes, read more,
because I think
more.
a lot of the root cause of the problem is that we put a lot of effort into learning grammar by learning grammar.
Yes.
And we do not read extensively. For example, like if you read a lot, you tend to see those sentence patterns being used in the context, and it's super natural for you to pick that up. But if you like learn something like in the textbook, you will find it difficult to relate to that.
Yes, and it would become a burden, right? And also like you said, you cannot relate to it because you only see it in textbook, but not in like real context, right?
Exactly.
So Johnny, let me ask you a question. So how did you learn English? Did you learn English by like memorizing all those rules to like?
I think I've been learning English over the past 20, 30 years. And I think, I adopted different approaches at different period of my life. For example, when I was a student, I tend to learn English. I try to immerse myself into this like English environment by listening to music or watching movies. I didn't put a lot of focus on grammar. But when I entered the workforce, my first job is at Ivy League Analytical Magazine. And my boss is Peter Lai Shixiong. I was obliterated. My self-confidence for learning English was obliterated first because that was one of his models, like 彻底的摧毁你，然后再把你建造起来。He had to destroy you first, to put you in your own place, and then build up your skills again. So I learned English grammar basically, mostly from Peter Lai. So I know a lot of that. I kind of like learned more extensively in that regard. So I think I kind of like combine those two approaches together.
Okay. So
it's not every day that you can learn from the real master of English in Taiwan.
Yeah. So I think like different people have different approaches, but I feel like knowing the grammar rules is one thing, but using it and getting input, getting output is another thing. Because
it just happened to me. The other day I was thinking about this problem, this question. Like Peter, he used to emphasize a lot about this ing, whether this is a gerund or whether this is what is that?
Present participle.
Present participle, right? Present participle. Because for English teachers, it's easy for them to distinguish these two, right? But for students, I think maybe some students, they all through their lives, they don't understand the difference between them. But they can still speak English.
Exactly. You don't have to know these for you to speak perfect English, right? Like native English speakers, they did not learn English through like memorizing grammar rules, right? They learned English from their parents as a baby, right? So I feel like...
so all through their life, they don't know the difference between a boring book and I'm interested in learning. The boring and the learning is different thing.
All through their lives, they probably have never thought of this concept before. I think this concept, we should lead them for grammarians or teachers.
Because I was also trying to teach, because I'm also teaching some elementary primary school students. And I try to, shed light on those grammar points, like what I just mentioned, the present participle and the gerund.
They're probably very confused.
Actually, but that one I think is a student of high caliber because he understands the difference.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I think that's because of that particular student. He's good at English and he has this kind of like flair for English learning. So I think it kind of like it hinges on different people. If you're a student who is, up to standard, who has a flair for English learning, I think that's okay for you to distinguish those two. But for, most people, most elementary primary schools in Taiwan,
it probably doesn't matter.
Yeah, if you say, okay, that one is a gerund and that one is a present participle, they will say, what the?
Because it complicates English, right?
Yeah.
I feel like when we're learning grammar, we should try to simplify the grammar rules and make them easier for them to apply in their daily lives. That's when I'm like designing grammar materials. I try to like simplify grammar rules and take out some very complicated grammar terminologies.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good approach. So, in the future, if you have a chance to sign up for our courses on Funday, I think that's a great place for you to learn something from Leo because Leo is a well-qualified teacher in this regard. Okay?
Yeah.
So thanks a lot for coming to the show today.
Thank you for your time.
Looking forward to your next coming. Okay?
Thank you, Johnny.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.